So some of the people that I've talked to through the years put on an optimistic lens when it comes to Islam, and they say if they're honest enough to admit, yes, Islam contains a lot of content that is completely incongruent with our values here, let's say in Western secular societies, but they will then add, just like other religions were able to reform, certainly Islam can be reformable. Now, I've often argued that actually that is an impossibility because if Islam is the final inerrant word of God, by definition, it could not be changed, right? ما في حرف اللي لازم تغيره, right? There's not a single letter, a single syllable that should be changed. So you
Right.
really are at an impasse where, from a doctrinal perspective, you cannot reform Islam. So having said that, so my first question will be, can you reform Islam? And then my second question is, can Islam coexist peacefully within a Western context?
Look, in order to reform Islam, we need someone with a higher authority than Allah itself. As long as this individual, under the umbrella of Islam or the constitution of Islam, they don't have authority to change the Quran. They may have the authority to have their own interpretation and put some nice twist to it, sugarcoat it, and try to make it, fit in the 21st century. But can we do this with every Islamic law? Can we do this with every verse in the Quran? I cannot think of anybody who has that authority. And all the Islamic religious centers or educational institutions, they don't have that authority. They are all under the burden of a book that was not even written during the days of Muhammad. It was written way after his death. Muhammad himself claimed that he was illiterate, meaning he did not write it, or when it was scripted, he did not have the tool to verify what others wrote on his behalf. Then it was collected some 150 years later. Some accounts say 400 years. So how can I consider this book legitimate? Then the Islamic Sharia, the Islamic law itself, it cannot meet with the demand and the modern day problems for humanity. If I want to go around and start butchering people, cutting their hands, cutting their arms, cutting their legs because of felonies or because of crimes they are committed, stoning people in the city centers, killing rapists and rape victims in the same place. Then what about jihad? This is one of the biggest problems. Most religions are delusional and they need to be actually integrated. They have the essence, and intelligent people see the essence of the way. So, and they can integrate it into a higher consciousness. That's possible. The Sufis were able actually to see Islam beyond politics and beyond man-made laws. Because if you are spiritual in your essence, if you are sincere and devotional, you will arrive at the truth eventually, because with humility and devotion, truthfulness, discipline, fasting, praying, this is not a political thing. But who those actually need the politics, or they need the religious mask? Those are the ones who are insecure. Those are the ones who just sheep. They don't have authority over their own lives, and they cannot escape the cave of religion. It's their security, it's their identity, it's everything they know. So hence, they want now to convert everybody, the rest of the universe, to be like them. rather than trying to integrate to a higher consciousness. So there are so many fundamental problems about Islam. Jihad is the most dangerous aspect of Islam that is not available in other religions. Not only to be delusional in your belief, because Muslims say that they are believers. And I say, well, believing is not enough. It's either you know or you don't know. Don't tell me you believe or you disbelieve. So the fact that they say that they are believers of Allah as entity that sits on a throne at the corner of the universe, that who has been preparing a hellfire for all the infidels and the majority of humanity who are non-Muslims, sounds absurd.
So how do you, someone who had your personal trajectory in life, who's coming with all the, you have all of the credentials and right imprimatur to say, I know what I'm talking about. I don't need some, undergraduate at Columbia University who can't tell what Islam is or what Palestine is to be lecturing me. And yet we're seeing millions of Westerners fall completely under the sway of this romantic idea of, Islam is the language, is the religion of the noble brown person. Palestine is the land of the oppressed. So there's kind of a romantic view that is in part shaped by this astronomical ignorance about the realities that you could certainly speak to. How do we get to the Westerners to appreciate some of the things that you're talking about? Is there a way, or is it completely hopeless, Mosab?
Well, it takes manifestation to understand a certain theory. For those who studied history, especially the Islamic history, it is not it's not a secret what was the outcome of an Islamic Khilafah and how many Khilafahs the Muslims tried to actually establish.
Can you explain what it is for those who don't know what that is?
Well, Khilafah means literally an Islamic state. But this Islamic state is not limited to a political border. It's not limited to geography. It's a global state that it's the duty of all jihadists, of all Muslims, to fight, okay? To practice jihad. And I say this is an Islamic obligation according all Islamic resources, that jihad is the most fundamental principle of Islam, and all Muslims are committed to jihad. Now, those who cannot fight by the means of the sword, like they are not capable physically or mentally, they have to donate and they have to fund those who are able to fight. And this shows you why the vast majority of the Muslim world are complicit in jihad and jihadism to the degree they have failed to condemn Hamas up to now. Why? Because they know deep in their belief that Hamas is practicing Islam. Now, the fancy idea of let's try to destroy or annihilate civilizations in the West and in the East. Islam is not only against Christians or Jews. Islam is against all non-Muslims. And that includes Hindus, that includes Buddhists, and we have a long history of Islamic violence against all other religions around the world. Now, for people, it's fancy because they haven't experienced the manifestation of an Islamic state, or they lack knowledge. They are not familiar with the Islamic history. That I don't want to say millions, but at least hundreds of thousands of Muslims actually killed each other in the internal Islamic conflict between Islamic Khilafats. So I don't want to go too far with this. The Islamic State, throughout the centuries, 1400 years of experience, proved to be a dead end, proved to be a failing model that did not work. So today, as a historian, as a person who is not willing to compromise my intelligence, I know that the Islamic Khilafah will not lead to prosperity, to peace, to stability, to justice. And it is going only to ignite the bloodlust for more dominion, for more aggression, where the Muslim jihadists can take women, children as booty. They can enslave humanity in case they don't convert to Islam. So my intelligence does not allow me to accept such a belief system. And many people tried so hard to differentiate, say, no, there are good Muslims and there are bad Muslims. You know, this game of good cup versus bad cup. But they are both, or both parties are serving the same God. They are serving the same constitution. Hence, we have to address Islam the way it is. And the more we tolerate such an aggressive and violent mindset, more violence will happen. And I don't want this young enthusiasts who think that establishing an Islamic state or a Palestinian state on the rubble of Israel or an Islamic state on the rubble of civilization, what's in common between these two entities, Palestine and the Islamic State, that both of them depend on the destruction of that which exists.
So then how do you, so if you were, let's say, Mosab, you were the leader of the free world, you were the emperor of reason, would you halt immigration from Islamic countries knowing that, notwithstanding the fact that there are millions of peaceful, loving Muslims that don't want to hurt anybody, Islam itself is problematic in terms of it being able to assimilate within a Western context? And therefore, how could you allow millions of people to come into your country that have 95, 99% of them Jew hatred? You're going to get an increase in Jew hatred. I live in Montreal. 20 years ago, I never had to worry about Islam. Today, I have to be very careful not to wear a Star of David that's too big in Montreal, Canada. So is the ultimate goal going to be Islam cannot coexist within the West? Or is there a way, to my earlier question, of making it somehow more gentle? Or are we doomed? What give us some optimism.
Okay. Take, for example, Americans from Muslim background. When they vow loyalty to the American Constitution, this is supposed, before they get their citizenship as immigrants, they make a vow to the American Constitution and loyalty, national loyalty to the United States. This is the supreme authority of all Americans. But are Muslims sincere when they pledge loyalty to the American Constitution? Are they sincere? Because this contradicts with Islamic law. The Sharia law does not see any higher authority than Allah. Whether if it's earthly or heavenly, Allah is, don't they say Allahu Akbar means Allah is greater?
The greatest, yeah.
It's not the greatest, is greater, but greater than who?
Than what, yeah.
Than everything else.
Yeah.
Than the other gods, and then man, than creation. They totally separate divinity from creation. And I think this is a fundamental problem in Islam, that does not see actually the creator and creation as one thing. So anyway, we need the Muslims who immigrate to the West to make their loyalty to the country that welcomes them and give them citizenship, not loyalty to a hypothetical entity called whatever you want to call it. Now, people have the freedom to practice Islam if they want. At some point, I was practicing Islam more than anyone else. My mother used to say, "You were born in a mosque," you know, when she wanted to give me a hard time when I asked questions. And it's true. You know, Islam was our project. My family brought Islam back to life. So this is where I get my authority to criticize Islam. Also, as someone who went to a Sharia school, someone who studied the Quran, someone who's familiar with the Islamic intellect and the different Islamic schools, their dialogue and their argument. So you cannot be American and Muslim at the same time. You have to choose. If you make your pledge and your loyalty to the American Constitution, you are contradicting with Allah. Then you have a moral crisis. But there is a concept in Islam called taqiyya. And in taqiyya, you can announce something, like if you were in Dar al-Kufr, which is, let's say, the country of infidels. In the country of infidels, if you were forced to choose, let's say, a fake identity, let's say American, this is a fake identity, but your true identity is Islam. So you can hide your true identity to avoid persecution and pretend to be American in the meantime. But when we have chaos, like the chaos we experiencing right now regarding Palestine, all of a sudden, the loyalty is not to the American Constitution. It becomes the loyalty to Islam and to Allah.